In 2010, I started logging every movie I watched, as at that time I was an aspiring screenwriter and used to watch a ton of movies to help me hone my writing and storytelling talent. However, around the end of 2014, I saw a movie that is on this list that forever changed the way I see the movie industry, and it persuaded me to quit my pursuit of Hollywood. So now I don't watch movies nearly as much as I used to, but with the decade coming to a close, I wanted to peruse my log of films I watched and compile a list of my personal favorites. These are my favorites, not saying these are the best or the ones that should be your favorites. I have different tastes than the average moviegoer. I don't like most mainstream movies. I don't like many of the action and superhero movies, as they typically don't feel true to life, but only seem to imitate it. I like movies that feel authentic. I tend to favor smaller budget and independent films, as well as foreign films, which is why there are so many on my 25 favorite films of the 2010 decade list. So let's get to it. But before we do, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that thumbs up button, as it helps the video reach more people. And feel free to leave a comment and let me know which of my selections you agree and disagree with. Okay, so number 25. This is a Spanish film I found on Netflix a couple years ago called Retribution. Here's the official Spanish title, as I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, but I was surprised at how good this was. It's similar as Speed with Keanu Reeves, just on a smaller budget. This was very well done, very intense, very fast paced, but not too fast paced. If you're into action thrillers, definitely give this one a go. This is a little gem from Australia called The Reef. This is the best shark film since Jaws. It's far superior to 47 Meters Down, The Shallows, Open Water, Deep Blue Sea, or any of these other shark thrillers. A Lonely Place to Die was shot in the UK and grabs you from the beginning and doesn't let go. It's intense from start to finish. It's a crime this film and more films like this are not more well known here in the US. These last three action thrillers I've listed here are way better than most of these big budget generic action movies that Hollywood pumps out. A Lonely Place to Die is an underrated gem you should definitely check out if you're into adventurous thrillers. Better Watch Out. I love this movie. I admit I didn't see the twist coming in the middle, and once it got going, it became pretty insane. It took a dark turn, but I thought the ending was hilarious. It's nothing spectacular or anything. It's very simple, but if you like horror thrillers, you should definitely check it out. This one probably slipped your radar. The Kindergarten Teacher. As you can probably tell by now, when I go over my list, I'm trying to be very vague, as I don't want to give away many of the plot details to these movies. So I'll try not to do that here. This is about a kindergarten teacher who observes one of the kids in her class and believes he has a special gift, and she starts trying to teach him how to use it. But as the film goes on, she starts to become obsessed with this student, and it becomes so subtly creepy. The acting and directing is masterful. There's such a quiet intensity that just builds and builds as the story progresses. This is one of those movies most people don't know about, but it's on Netflix and worth a watch if you're into dramas with a bit of a subtle underlying creep factor. Shutter Island. Finally a movie you've heard of. I don't need to say much about this one, as you've probably seen it, but if for some reason you didn't, you positively need to watch, as this closes with one of the best twists of the 2010 decade. Then you need to go back and view it a second time, and you'll see everything completely different. That's the sign of a brilliant movie. The Place Beyond the Pines. This movie could have been in my top 5 of the decade and possibly even cracked my top 5 of all time, had the direct story from the first act continued throughout the entire film. As is, the movie is very good, but the movie is broken up into 3 sections, which is creative as they all run together at the end. The problem is that the story of the first act was so much better than the following acts. The first act was a rare accomplishment. The first act was immaculate storytelling. The script for the first act was flawless, not a hair out of place. Ryan Gosling's character was so complex and fascinating, and you just wanted to see more and more. If you haven't seen this one, you have to watch it, at least the first act, as the first act is absolutely brilliant and intriguing storytelling. Joker. Like I said about The Place Beyond the Pines, this also could have made my top 5 of the decade and probably my top 5 of all time had I enjoyed the entire film as much as I did one of the acts. Except in this film, it was the last act that stood out. Much like the first act of The Place Beyond the Pines, the last act of Joker was immaculate storytelling. But of course, in this case, I realize you couldn't have had the events unfold in the last act without the setup from the first 2 acts. So I understand that, but for whatever reason, I didn't really enjoy much from the first 2 acts. And I did not like the way they portrayed Thomas Wayne. That left a sour taste in my mouth. But with all that said, the last act more than makes up for what I didn't like about the first half. There were 2 sequences from the last act, possibly 3, that would be regarded as some of the greatest and most influential moments in cinema history. Phoenix is absolutely chilling in his portrayal of Joker once he finally snaps. He deserves nothing less than the Oscar. The director Todd Phillips deserves the same, as he didn't shy away from authenticity even if it makes the viewer squirm in their chair. And that's what I like in movies. Movies that are raw and honest and feel true to real life, even if it's uncomfortable. That's what makes intriguing storytelling. Machine Gun Preacher. The title of this sounds cheesy, but when you learn the context of what it actually means, it isn't. The film is based on a true story about Sam Childers, a man who was once a biker heavily involved in crime and sent to prison. Just after being released from prison, his wife took him to church, where he felt drawn to God by the Holy Spirit and became baptized and gave his life to Christ. Forsaking his old life of crime, he felt led to go to the Sudan in Africa and help protect innocent children from the tyranny and violent attacks from a brutal renegade militia. Being a preacher who used machine guns to defend these villagers against the militia who continued to try to destroy their village and take many of the children captive, he was given the nickname Machine Gun Preacher, which is where the title came from. Here is a photo of the real-life Sam Childers standing alongside Gerard Butler, who played him in the movie. This is an underrated and well-executed film with a great message that deserves more recognition than it's currently given. Girlfriend. I absolutely love the heart of this movie. This is one of those criminally unknown, underrated, hidden gems that very few have seen, but is actually really good. I hate the way there are a slew of Transformers sequels that gets worse and worse with every new installment, but little films like this get buried and go virtually unnoticed. This is about Evan, a young guy with Down syndrome who is in love with this girl who basically views him like a brother, but Evan is oblivious that he's in the friend zone and persists to pursue her anyway. Shortly into the film, Evan's mother passes away, and Evan receives a chunk of money that he's more than willing to give his love interest, who has a daughter and is struggling financially. She doesn't want to take advantage of his kind heart and lead him on, but she really does need the money. so she wrestles with what to do. Meanwhile, her menacing, temperamental ex-boyfriend is trying to win her back, and he gets tired of Evan being around her so often and aims to put a stop to it. And then he learns about the money Evan is coming to and plots to get it away from him. The Dark Knight Rises. This one would have been higher on my list had it not felt quite as rushed. This film would have been better served to have been cut into 2 parts like the Hunger Games series did with Mockingjay, and spend more time further developing the plot. Although this one could have been better, there's still a lot to love here, particularly the scenes with Bane. Much like the Joker from Dark Knight, Bane controls the screen nearly every moment on screen and is hard to look away from. Christian Bale's perfect performance of Bruce Wayne and Batman, coupled with Hans Zimmer's immaculate score, elevate what could have just been a pretty good superhero movie and turn it into something great. Just not nearly as great as The Dark Knight, but still good enough to be one of my favorite films of the decade. It's especially good considering the way Christopher Nolan had to revise this installment after the sudden and unexpected death of Heath Ledger. In my opinion, Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy is the best trilogy of all time, so props to him for delivering this masterpiece. Boy Missing. Here's another Spanish film. This one's a mystery thriller, which is one of my favorite genres, as you'll see later on the list. This one has a lot of twists and turns and just keeps you guessing throughout. I love movies that are unpredictable. When I sit down and watch a film, I don't want to know where I'm going. I want to be surprised. I want to be intrigued. To me, in order for a movie to work, there has to be some element of intrigue. Whether it's the plot, central character, villain, or maybe just the location and culture, or even the cinematography. This one definitely has an intriguing plot. It reminds me of the French thriller from 2006, Tell No One. In fact, I have quite an extensive list of favorite movies from the 2000 decade as well. If that's a video you'd be interested in seeing, let me know in the comments. So yeah, there's a bonus recommendation. If you're into mystery thrillers, do yourself a favor and check out Boy Missing and Tell No One. Take Shelter. I loved the intrigue behind this one, as you're never really sure if Curtis has been given a prophetic warning from God or if he is simply off his rocker. Michael Shannon is one of the greatest and most underrated actors in Hollywood, and he delivers an Academy Award performance here as Curtis, a man who many feel is suffering from mental illness, as he warns the town about a storm coming. Jessica Chastain, also a phenomenal talent, plays Curtis's skeptical but supportive wife as Curtis seemingly descends deeper and deeper into madness. Michael Shannon and Jessica Chastain are the perfect pairing for this film, as both actors are so versatile and have such a wide range of ability on screen. This is a simple film, but it's so well executed and effective. It's one of those movies, like a Shutter Island, that will have you thinking and talking about it for days after. John Wick. I typically am not into action movies, and the reason is most action movies focus so much on the action sequences, choreography, special effects, and CGI that they often lack heart and lose the pulse of storytelling and character development. But when an action film excels in all of the above and manages to tell a story with heart and a central character that the audience not only roots for, but also cares about the well-being of, then action films can be a rare and special experience. Such is the case with John Wick, which was a surprise hit of 2014. I went in with low expectations and even thought I may walk out of the theater and trade my ticket for another movie to watch. But once the movie started, I was instantly drawn in, as we open with a sequence that develops Reeves' character and makes him relatable as we watch his ailing wife pass away at the hospital. But she left him a gift to help him cope in life without her. She had a puppy delivered to him, that he reluctantly accepts at first, but after a short time becomes attached to. And after we learn to care for this new friendship between man and his best friend, a gang breaks into Wick's home and commits a despicable act that prompts former assassin John Wick out of retirement. The action sequences and choreography are mesmerizing to look at as Wick goes on a rampage throughout the entire city to find each and every member of this gang and their associates as he unloads the burden of the loss he is feeling. If you missed this one and like good action thrillers with heart, this is one you should definitely give a go. Sleep Tight, another Spanish thriller starring Luis Tosar, the same actor from a previous Spanish title on my list, Retribution. He's actually a really good actor and has a slew of good films on his resume. But Sleep Tight is far different from his other films or any other film on this list. It's far from the best movie on my list, but it's probably the creepiest. Tosar plays a landlord who manages an apartment building and becomes obsessed with a woman resident. There have been other movies with a similar premise, but none of them have been executed nearly this well. It's uncomfortable to watch unfold, and I love it because you never know what's going to happen next. Unpredictable, intriguing, and suspenseful. My kind of movie. Another strong Spanish thriller. Frozen. Man, this doesn't happen often, if ever, but I actually had to pause this one and take an intermission break because it got so intense. If you take a moment to absorb the predicament they were in as I did, it's truly terrifying. Some people have scoffed at the concept of this movie and said it's too unrealistic. And while I do agree it would be very hard and completely idiotic to wind up in this situation, stranger things have happened, and the expertise directing of Adam Green makes this feel plausible and authentic. This is one of those hidden gems that is typically only seen by horror buffs. I admit it's not for everyone, as it raised my heart rate and probably blood pressure, but if you like a movie that offers a unique experience, this one delivers. It's not overly violent or gory or supernatural. It falls more into the thriller horror genre. I don't want to go into detail because if you want to check it out, the best way to go into it is cold. Pun intended. Nightcrawler. Who knew the Gyllenhaal siblings could be this creepy, as I listed Maggie earlier on the list for The Kindergarten Teacher, but little brother Jake takes it to another level as he portrays Louis Bloom, one of the creepiest characters I've ever seen on screen. Bloom isn't very violent or rambunctious, but there's something menacing brewing under the surface, waiting to erupt at any moment. It's very subtle yet extremely threatening at the same time. I'm not sure what kind of mindset Gyllenhaal had to get into to play this character so masterfully, but whatever it was, it worked amazingly well. I've never been a big fan of Jake Gyllenhaal, but I immediately recognized this was probably the creepiest character I had seen since Heath Ledger's Joker from 2008. I was surprised he was capable of pulling this kind of role off, and I think he was robbed of an Oscar nomination and actually should have won. Bloom was such a creepy character because you just knew he was willing to do anything to get ahead, and those with a seared conscience and have absolutely nothing to lose are the scariest people you will encounter in society. Stay away from people like Louis Bloom, but do watch Louis Bloom and Nightcrawler, which is an intriguing take on modern day media and how someone like a Louis Bloom has no limits as to how far to go to be the first to catch a headline. Hush. Maddie, a deaf female writer, lives alone in a secluded house deep in the woods. Pros: great environment to concentrate on writing. cons. Great environment for maniacal serial killers with crossbows to show up on your doorstep, which is exactly what happens here. And if that wasn't challenging enough for the average woman, how much harder will it be when you can't hear? This is a well-executed cat and mouse thriller that should be seen by more people. Although this is a horror movie with a simple premise, I feel like there's a lot of heart in the story and central character. I thought the first act was fascinating, as it took Maddie a while to even realize she had an intruder on her property, and the killer observed her for a bit before recognizing she was deaf, and then seemed even more eager to toy with his prey in the most methodical and terrifying way he could before taking out his target. This is an experienced killer who revels in the hunt, but in this case, he underestimated the amount of fight and heart of his victim in what is one of the most suspenseful thrillers I've seen and one of my all-time favorites of the genre. Upgrade. Where did this movie come from, and why is it not more hyped up? This is one of the most brilliant and creative movies I've ever seen, and the ending was genius and put everything that had transpired throughout the story into perspective, even if it was disturbing. I didn't say it was a happy fairy tale ending or even a good ending, but it was extremely clever. My only gripe about the film was I thought it could have been 20 to 30 more minutes and maybe fleshed out some more character development, but then again, maybe if it had been slowed down, the experience wouldn't have been as enjoyable. That's a good problem for a movie to have when the viewer's biggest complaint is they wanted to see more. If you're a fan of sci-fi action films like The Matrix, Equilibrium, Snowpiercer, Minority Report, etc., then this is an absolute must-see. Trust me. Drive. I think most guys who watched this back in the day came away wanting to be Ryan Gosling. Cool, calm, and collected under pressure. He's like this generation's Steve McQueen. But what I liked so much about The Driver was how selfless he was and the way he risked his life to help protect his neighbor and young son from the gang of criminals this family was trying to escape. Gosling was born to play this role, as it's hard to imagine anyone else's Driver. In addition to Gosling's performance was the directing, cinematography, and soundtrack, all equally stellar, as everything came together immaculately to perfect this masterpiece that is nearly flawless. Nicholas Winding Refn's slick, stylized vision of bright lights, synthesized score, and mystery man of few words serving his hero makes this not only one of the best action films of the 2010 decade, but of all time. The opening sequence, where we get to see Driver's impeccable driving skills on full display and his plan to evade police, was fun to watch, but then it leads into the opening credits when Kavinsky's Night Call song plays, and that's when I realized I was in for something rare, as the soundtrack and cinematography merged together to create a unique, pleasurable, and entertaining cinematic experience from start to finish. The Last Exorcism. I know that the ending ruined this one for a lot of people that may have otherwise liked it, but they're missing the point of the story. The ending aligned right up with the narrative that the story had been telling from the opening frame. This story was about Pastor Cotton. This was about his journey and struggling faith. But those who hated the ending were fixated on Nell, the girl who Pastor Cotton exorcised, and whether or not she was actually demon-possessed or crazy or sick or whatever. And yes, trying to figure out what her ailments were was an interesting part of the story, but it wasn't intended to be the focal point. The point of the story wasn't Nell's affliction, it was Pastor Cotton's wavering faith. So when the movie ends and Nell's conclusion is a bit too vague for what some viewers wanted, they trashed the film altogether, failing to realize Pastor Cotton had an incredible character arc that you missed because you were sidetracked by the girl who appeared to be demonically possessed. This movie is titled The Last Exorcism. Why is that? Is it because it's Nell's last exorcism? No, it's Pastor Cotton's last exorcism. And if you get that, then you can see this movie actually had a beautiful portrayal of faith, but one's spiritual eyes must be open to see it. Aside from all that, this film had a few sequences that were absolutely creepy and suspenseful. There were no cheap jump scare tactics. It was worse because you never knew what was about to happen. Just when you thought you had it figured out, something new would be revealed. I love this movie and consider it a horror masterpiece, and is not only one of my favorites of the decade, but of all time. The Invisible Guest, and here we have another Spanish thriller, and this has one of the greatest, most shocking, unpredictable twist endings you will never see coming. I think 0 out of 100 people would guess it correctly. It is absolutely jaw-dropping the way everything unfolds at the end, and is such a brilliant display of misdirection by the writer and director. I thought about going over a brief synopsis of the plot, but decided I don't want to risk spoiling anything, so it's best to just go into this with as little information as possible. Just trust me and watch for yourself. It's on Netflix. The Invisible Guest, not to be confused with The Invisible Guardian. Just watch it and prepare to be wowed. Something Anything. I know very few have even heard of this film, but this movie actually changed my life. We primarily watch movies as a form of entertainment, and yeah, at times they can be informative or educational, but rarely does a movie have a profound effect on your life, one that you carry with you for years after viewing. I don't want to say much about the plot, but as we watch our central character go on this journey and witness her start to focus on the things in life that really matter and filter out the things that don't, it can really alter the way you see life and possibly even the way you live it. I absorbed this movie's message loud and clear. I saw this nearly 5 years ago and I still think about it often. It's influenced a lot of the things I do and a lot of the things I don't do. This is number 3 on my list, and I saw this around the same time I saw the number 2 title on this list, and the two of them together had a huge impact on my life, which leads me to Starry Eyes. Okay, so this is the film I was referring to at the beginning of the video that persuaded me to stop pursuing acting and screenwriting. I made a video about this movie a while ago and how I quit pursuing the movie industry after watching it. I'll leave a link in the outro if you want to check it out. So basically, this film is about an aspiring actress living in LA and is going from audition to audition, failing to land any roles. After an audition, she feels she didn't do her best and stormed to the restroom and started kicking and screaming in a rage to release her frustration, and then discovers the casting agent had entered the restroom. She immediately becomes embarrassed and apologetic, but to her surprise, the casting agent invites her to another audition where they want her to use all of that pent-up frustration and rage. They encourage her to come out of herself. After a few satisfying auditions, the actress is invited to interview with the CEO of a movie studio who tells her he can make her a movie star overnight. And that is when the insanity begins. Although a fictional movie, I discerned this was a reveal, or at least close to it, of what really transpires in Hollywood. As much as I love movies and the art of acting, it's not worth compromising my faith. But I do love this movie because I feel it serves as an excellent cautionary tale. So I recommend this movie to people to offer a glimpse of some of the things going on in the entertainment industry. But some have told me the content is too dark for them, and I understand, as this one isn't for sensitive viewers, as it takes a very dark and brutal turn in the final act. And there were even horror buffs who had a hard time watching what this aspiring actress does to ensure she does indeed become a star. The Hidden Face. And here we are, topping the list with yet another Spanish thriller. This is my favorite film of the decade and one of my favorites of all time. But a quick warning, do not, I repeat, do not watch the trailer for this before viewing the film. The trailer reveals the plot twist and softens the impact of the reveal that takes place midway in the story. This has one of the best twists I've ever seen that will absolutely horrify you. But the twist is actually revealed halfway through the movie and not the end. The first time I watched this, I was lying down and was a bit tired and was very interested in the movie, but I started dozing off, and then it took a turn I did not see coming, and the twist was revealed. And I was jolted awake and literally started gasping for air. I was floored. Watching this for the first time was an experience. And that's what a movie should be. Not just something we zone out at and stare at a screen for 2 hours, but something that makes us feel. Something that makes us feel like we're going through what the characters on screen are. We experience their experience. And when the twist is revealed halfway through this story, you will have an experience. Like The Invisible Guest, I don't want to give away many plot details, as it's best to watch these films not knowing anything going in. These two films both execute misdirection as well as any film has ever done. Do yourself a favor and make these two films a double feature the next night you're movie watching. And let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching this list as much as I did making it. I narrowed this list down from around 80 movies. There are a lot of great titles that I had to exclude, including many other lesser known films. If people are interested in knowing what other films I loved in the 2010 decade, let me know in the comments and maybe I can make another video. I also have many other movie lists I've made over the years if people are interested in seeing any of those. Again, thanks for watching. If you like this video, share it and give it a thumbs up. God bless.